Today I've got Jeff Cronkshaw. I'm the founder and group managing director of LanciaConsult, which is a fascinating consultancy for those of you that haven't heard of it. For those of you that have heard of it, you'll already know this. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. I wondered if you could just take a minute to introduce yourself and your role in the company, and also tell us what LanciaConsult does.
No problem. So thanks, Joe. Thanks for the opportunity to talk and share our story and some of the experiences we've been through. So I'm Jeff. I'm the one of the founding directors of LanciaConsult. The other, when we first started, was my wife, Isabella. We are a management and technology consultancy advisory company that started nearly 10 years ago. Which would be 10 in April 22, and we focus really on fairly standard, broad range of services across program management, business consulting, technology delivery, and more recently into M&A, merger acquisition, and organizational type consulting work. And we'll talk more about what we've done. We've also grown into more diversity around technology and software services in the last few years, last couple of years. So that's who LanciaConsult is. And my background, I've been in IT project management, program management since university. I did computer science. I started off not in consulting, but in industry with a US pharmaceutical. But I was doing project delivery, IT delivery, kind of internal consulting type work, if you like. So it's very similar. And then I moved to Accenture in London. I moved from there to Accenture in Singapore, and about 9 years ago, we started LanciaConsult.
Okay, and when you started off, what was in your head? You clearly got a good background in the area. You'd been at Accenture. Did you see a gap in the market that you thought you could fill? Was your intention to grow a firm? So how did you start off? How did the conversation with your wife go?
Well, it's a mixture of, it wasn't one compelling reason. It was a mixture of reasons that came together at a similar time. And I think if you talk to most founders that that have done something like this mid-career, it's usually a combination of factors. So for us, it was one was our personal situation. We were living in Singapore. We were married. We just had a daughter. She was very young. My wife, Isabella, was with Accenture for over 11 years as well. She was Accenture as well. And she had come back from maternity leave, and the kind of traditional consulting thing wasn't working very well for her. And that's not an uncommon story with working mothers and also working fathers as well. It's just, it just wasn't really clicking. So she took a decision to leave, and we said, well, why don't we create a contracting kind of company that allows her to work freelance? That's the honest truth, how we started the basics. But it quickly, in those first 6 months, it was a few conversations with ex-clients and clients, and Isabella got into a client very quickly in Singapore. And I think it was around about 6 months in, we started to think, actually, there's an opportunity here where I was a bit frustrated. I was just below partner level at Accenture. I was doing very well. I was enjoying it, but frustrated. And we saw in Southeast Asia that there was a huge vacuum below the big 4, 5, 6, however you define it, right down to very, very small consulting companies. So we thought, look in Europe, look at US and the growth in niche consulting firms. We definitely saw opportunity in Southeast Asia at the very early days. And we thought, well, we have a chance here to build a consulting business just in Singapore that could fill a very big gap between the very huge brands and the very small one. Plus, the top of that market was getting more and more exclusive. They were pushing away smaller deals. Smaller deals, I mean sub 20 million. Okay. So they were moving away from that space. So
still enough to make a bit of cash off.
Still a lot. Yes, exactly, and also enough to frustrate clients. So you mix that in with our personal situation, what we're doing, mixing a bit of frustration that I was getting pushed more and more into a sales type role in Accenture, and that's the nature of the beast in the larger consultancies. And yeah, we stayed up all night one night and to the decision that I would resign as well, which is a huge call.
Yes,
But
especially with a new child. Yeah.
yeah, and also I'd actually left Accenture for once before to go back to my old company for a year in China, and I can explain that later. But I knew there was no going back, and at that point, when we talked about it overnight, it was okay. If we're going to do this, okay, we've got our CVs, right? We're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Now, if it all goes wrong, we'll get a job. It's okay.
Yeah.
But if we're going to do this thing, it's going to have to be multi-office. It's got to be multi-country. It's got to be more than just a team of 20 people in Singapore. It's got to be more than that. Else, what's the point?
That was because of the nature of the projects and the clients.
It was more the cliff we were jumping off.
Okay.
So you have to remember, I was just below what is now. It's changed a few times. It's now MD in Accenture. Back then it was senior executive. Before I was partner. I had share options. I was paid very well. My wife was pretty senior as well. She had, she'd resigned from that. You're not just giving up a salary, you're giving up a career path. You're giving up share options, maybe. You're giving up a net. Well, it's very difficult to go back into that world again if you like Accenture in that situation. So the reason why Lancia had to be more than just a niche consultancy in Singapore was because we were just giving up so much, and that was another factor. So you mix all those together. That's what led to the, let's say, month 6 decision for me to jump in, and then very quickly we hired our first employee because then the journey started, which was we need to be multi-team, multi-office, multi-client as quick as possible, and 10 years later we're very happy where we got to. But so that's an honest answer. It was a combination of factors, and then you mix them together, led to the ambition came out of that, and off we went. So we did the journey that came ahead was completely unknown.
Sure.
We had a lot to lean back on.
Did you put together a sort of high level plan in terms of target revenue, number of clients, projects, employees?
Looking back on it now, I laugh about it, but my first 6 months when I left Accenture, so Isabella was very busy in a client, so she was lost. She's gone. 5 days a week, bang, and generating revenue. I very quickly got into a few contracts, only 2 of us, and we knew then it was like, well, if we're both doing this, nothing's going to happen.
Yep.
It's nothing. We got no time. So, but actually, one of the things I did was looking back on it was crazy. I did exactly that. We rented an office. I got out of the home, as in away from daughter and home life, and go to the office every day. And I went through all of my LinkedIn. I went through all my contacts. I put this fantastic CRM spreadsheet together with potential and buying appetite, and you name it.
Right.
I was very proud of this spreadsheet, and it was pointless.
Oh, no.
And it didn't achieve anything. I knew that it took me 2-3 weeks of very, very artistic planning.
Yep.
But if you'd asked me at the start of that process, who are you going to call to develop projects with, I could have told you that anyway.
Okay.
I didn't need that spreadsheet. It just made me feel better.
Yep.
And so I did do that. And so I looked at that, I thought, well, if 5 of them say yes, and we can hire one person. And I'd say within 2-3 months, Joe, that got through another window.
Okay.
And what we did then is just I went to meet and have coffees and sit down with everyone I knew that I thought would open up to me and give me some advice and potentially want to help us out.
Okay.
And that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
And then we just got busy in clients, we hired some people, and off we went.
Yep.
So yes, I think the planning, the strategy, the developing the business elements kicked in about 3-4 years in.
Okay. And and I know that it's it's a bit of a shock when you've had people doing the sales and admin for you and all of a sudden you've got to do that yourself. What was the biggest learning experience from jumping from Accenture to running your own firm?
Again, it changes. It changed over time a little bit. So in the first year or 2, you're very busy doing work. So as in client work.
Yep.
So you do feel a bit lonely. You don't have that team environment around you, that ecosystem, like you say. But it's quite liberating as well, because you've got an awful lot of skills, you've got an awful lot of experience, a lot of templates and projects in your armory.
Yep.
That I was amazed how quickly we could do. I could do things, and also our new starters coming in could do things. So in the first year or so, it was a bit more liberating than missed things, but you did feel very lonely at times. Yeah.
Yep.
I think when you start to miss the big company stuff was probably like year 3, 4, when you get into those processes like sales and finance, because you have to do everything.
Yep.
So yeah, when I was my last couple of years at Accenture, I had finance teams, I had recruitment teams. I didn't have to think about recruitment. I didn't have to think about branding. I had to think about bench. I didn't have to think about client escalation. I didn't have to any of these things. There's all this ecosystem around you. But suddenly that when you start needing those things, you have to literally build them yourself. So, but that's part of the fun of building a company. That as I got into
I think you're the only person I've ever interviewed that said they enjoyed that side of things.
I do, and I think it's what I was saying. And if you talk to our directors, I say all the time, which must be fed up to it, but I say to them, we must put things in place before we need them.
Yeah.
Because it's much harder when you need them to put them in place. And of course it's more expensive. Of course it's difficult to do it. We don't really need it. It feels like overkill. It feels like over the top. But that's what it taught me in the first couple of years so we put in things much quicker than we needed them. And that made it a lot easier. And today that debate is still there. It's harder when you're, 70, 80 people, and you're operating with the businesses we do now, but we still talk about it. So we're talking right now about a full-fledged professional services suite. Do we really need it just yet? No, but I know it'll be really hard in about a year or two. So yes, I think you do miss those things. But then it also, I look at it in a very positive way, which is it gives you an opportunity to learn them and also put it in exactly how you want it. So there's lots of things we copied that work well, and there's things that we absolutely did not want to copy and do our own way, and it allows you those things. But yeah, it's you are very much on your own, and you very much need to develop those processes yourself.
It does. I mean, I guess it helps that the professional service suites have come down so much in price over the last 10 years.
Yes.
Previously, you'd have been getting an ERP system for a fortune, and now you can buy something per license, sort of, $20 a license.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It has got a lot. It has got a lot more consumable. It's not so much the price. It's more that you don't. There's a right time to put those things in place. So even things like invoicing. When we first started, we didn't need an invoicing system. We just did it on Microsoft Word and Excel. But I know companies that are 15, 20 million a year still doing that. Right. So we got out of that pretty quick and got into something like a QuickBooks type thing and so on. So we put those things in. We put QuickBooks in when we were probably doing 4 invoices a month. Don't need it, but it was much easier to do it then. And that policy we still stick to. So it is. I think today, in the last 5 years especially, there are lots of very consumable services to help professional services firms. Yes, much more so than say 10, 15 years ago. We had to build them yourselves or have a very expensive one. So it has got a lot easier, yes. But the processes are the key thing. Governance and processes are the ones that you can't buy.
Sure.
They're the ones that you need to look at it in a kind of a fun way.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, thank you. And we touched on recruitment, and obviously, I say obviously, it's obviously to you and me because we've spoken about it before. But one of the things about Lancia is that you've got a very young workforce, and that includes the senior management team. I think you mentioned that you were the oldest among them. When you were growing, where did you find your people, and did you recruit younger people because of the fit, or because of the cost, or because you like developing people? So I guess I'm asking what the strategy was around people, and how that changed over time.
So at first, I think it's very hard to attract people to a young professional, any young company, a young professional services company that 2-3 people, unless you know them personally. And if those people do join you when you're only 2-3 people, they probably want a lot.
Mm.
And if they're not quite, if they are perfect at that job, they're probably saying something's probably wrong.
Mm.
So what we did in the first few years is we hired people we knew
Okay.
and knew them personally, and they knew us personally,
Yeah.
and they they wanted to work with us, and we wanted to work with them. So that, I would say, the first 6 or 7, I can probably check it, but definitely the first 10 or so were known to us very personally, or just via one connection away. And so that's how we did it. And because of that, it meant they were generally our age, or yeah, or they worked for me or Isabella,
Sure.
or those people. And it was quite a close knit group. So that kind of created that foundation. But then as that group grew, we very quickly started doing placement students and graduates.
Yep.
So we've got graduates in the company now that have been with us for 3-4 years, which is fantastic. And it's very great. It's great to see people that have only worked for us. That's quite a powerful moment when you think, actually, you're building their career, and they only know, their only experience of consulting is LanciaConsult. So it's quite a privileged position to be in. So we did that quite quickly. We have brought people in we don't know very well as we grew, but it's always been via network and referral up to a certain point.
Yep.
And I'd say in the last couple of years we've got much more, because we've had to, and it's the right thing to do. So with the graduate stream and the kind of young experienced hires coming in, we've also started doing more kind of aggressive reaching out to people we don't know, or don't know very well. So that's the basics of it. And is it deliberately a very young team? No, I think it is because of that approach. And because of that, we have a young executive team that's 10 years old. Our average age in the exec is below 40, which gives us, now most young consultancies are 10 years old. Their management team will probably be in the late 50s.
Yes.
So that, for us, it gives us a very good advantage. All of us have a long runway ahead of us. We're not tired. We want to keep going. It also means that we're learning as much as our team is. So I think our culture and our dynamics is being fed by that as well. But we are bringing people that are, it's not an age thing. It's more, we have got colleagues now joining us that are older than me, significantly as well. Right. And that's absolutely fine. So I think it's just the history of that and where it got to, kind of explains it. But we're quite proud of that. And I think we've been quite aggressive as well with things like apprenticeships and young placements and year out student, all those sort of things we're quite keen on. So
you've got a very strong social engagement practice, at least in the UK firm, which I know certainly over the last 5 years with my own students, I've noticed a shift. They're more attracted to and engaged by that type of thing.
Definitely in the UK, but I left the UK nearly 15 years ago, and I tell my UK friends and colleagues that I've seen it now, being outside the UK kind of bubble. The UK social impact agenda is very unique.
Okay.
Generally, as a country and a culture, and I've lived in Asia, China, Singapore. I lived in Germany the last 4 or 5 years. I've traveled a lot. I've worked in the States, France, Belgium. I've been everywhere. But UK's attitude to that is unique, and it's simple things like charity shops on the high street is a UK thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
The donation culture, it's been around for multiple generations. It's not unusual. I mean, it's timely now, but it's not unusual. Like the Afghan crisis, that the UK has raised a phenomenal amount of money. And that's not a surprise to me at all. It's a very unique culture. So our social impact agenda has started actually a few years ago, and it started off with an attitude from me and the other execs to say we want to give back, and we don't really know how yet. And it started off with simple things like different ways of employment. It's down to financial donations to universities and students. It's down to working with third sector organizations with time, donation, or margin, and different ways of doing that. And we've done that in Singapore and in the UK. But the UK, I'm not surprised it's on fire, because it's exactly what they want, and it's working very well. Yeah, so it is the same in Singapore. It's just a different style.
As you grow, a lot of firms have a challenge when they stop recruiting people who are friends of friends.
Yeah.
And because they've either used up that resource. The challenge then becomes, why should a good student or a good consultant come and work for you versus Deloitte or KPMG or Accenture? Now, I know you've got experience with Accenture, and I certainly know why I would recommend students to join a boutique. But of course, there's a lot of boutiques out there. So, what do you think is it that you emphasize about your firm that attracts people to you?
Well, I think first of all, the large consultancies, I'll never kind of discredit them too much, because I benefit a tremendous amount from them. And LanciaConsult is in some ways not a product of them, but is skilled up because of them, right? So I generally think consulting is a fantastic career for consultant graduates anyway. I think if you're not clear what you want to do, and you just want to tackle problems and challenges, consulting generally is a great thing to do. I think the difference between a large and a boutique or a privately owned consultancy is it comes down to particularly for us, you'll have a chance to help build a company, and you'll have a chance to shape that business and grow that business and take on some leadership roles or opportunities that you would not get in a large consultancy. Now, we can say that quite confidently because most of our management team have come from large consultancies, and we know it's working because we have people joining us from KPMG, Deloitte, etc., Accenture, and what they're looking for is we can give them the same type of work, the same challenging work. We give them more diversity and experiences, and we can mix that with entrepreneurial, build a company. So you just cannot get that. And I think one of the things why I left large consultancy was it's very easy to get caught in a capability or a sector. And I've got colleagues that have worked with one client for 15 years. I've got colleagues that have worked in government for 20 years. I was lucky. I moved into government consulting in the UK. I would never have got out of that group unless I'd moved to Singapore. So I moved to Singapore. I switched to products, and I experienced Asia and product. Now because Accenture was a big global consultancy, I could do that, right? So it's still a benefit of that, but generally that's quite rare. So if you talk to most consultants about why they leave large consultancy companies, it's usually a mixture of frustration, stuck in a group or sector. They want to do something different. They want to go in and use the skills they've learned, and they feel they can't do it. And that's why consultancies have a very high attrition in that mid-range. Now with boutique or Lancia, we feel that we still have attrition because consulting is like that, but we can give many more opportunities and experiences, and I think that's the biggest difference. That, and it's quite a cool place to work.
Yeah, you are biased though, of course.
Yes, of course. Yes.
But I did check your Glassdoor review, and it's very good. You get very high ratings for. I don't know if you know about Glassdoor, but
yes.
There's no hiding on the internet these
days. I know.
I have interviewed a couple of people for my book who are singing their praises, and I actually reminded them that Glassdoor had another story to tell. I'm not saying that these are always reliable, but
you got to keep, and I'm sure at some point we will have someone who doesn't have a great experience. And I think one of the things is that we are developing our own culture. Like I said, we're just nearly 10. But interestingly, within our businesses, they have different ages as well. So we can talk about the growth later on, but our UK business is 4 or 5 years old. Our Singapore business is 9 years old. They are different. And you're joining. So if you join our UK team, you have the benefit of our European team. You have the benefit of joining a 10-year-old business and a 4-year-old business. So you get both sides of the coin. So we moved one of our UK consultants to Singapore during COVID. So he went through joining a company at 4 people in Bristol to then switching to a team of 30, 40 in Singapore, but it's the same business. So that's I think there are elements that make us unique, and other boutiques are like that as well. But we definitely play those things up. So I think that's what gets good reviews. Yeah.
In the comparison to other boutiques, I think, and I could be wrong here. You do please correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the impression with Lancia that you might actually also be different from some other fast-growing boutiques, in that you could have sold by now if you wanted to. And it seems to me, and certainly looking at some of the reviews on Glassdoor, it doesn't seem to me that you're hammering your consultants with 100% utilization rates. It seems to me that you have sort of a long-term vision for the company, where perhaps, selling out in a year's time isn't necessarily the plan, and perhaps and firms that have that mentality seem to be more interested in developing the people, developing the capability. Is this the point where you turn around and say, well, actually, Joe, we're selling tomorrow?
We're not selling tomorrow.
There we go.
So I'd love to, I get asked that question quite a bit, but the simplest answer I think to that is that when we started this company, we were very young.
Sure.
And I was 33-ish, 34. I have at that point, I still now, but at that point I had a hell of a lot of career ahead of me. And I think what that meant was we were not carefree, but there was no fixed objectives. And I get asked the question a lot by the team to say, new starters saying, what was the vision when you started? I say, you know what, when you're 50 and you're walking away on a 3-year partnership or something, or you've been a partner for 10 years, you've got to have a pretty good plan.
Sure.
Right? Because you know exactly how hard it is, and you don't really want to work like this for 20 years.
Yeah.
When you're 33, you don't have those cares. Looking back at when I did it, we didn't have that clear strategy. We didn't need to. So I think the reason for that is that we're quite relaxed. We're quite settled on our basic strategy, which is we want to build a global challenger brand that is one of the world leaders in management technology advisory, and we want to do that with consulting at its core, but we're building diverse businesses, and that's it. And underneath that, there's lots of plans and decisions and things we try and don't do and countries we look at. But that basic site means that that holds us together. So now we're very happy where we've got to. We're very happy at 5 years. We're happy at 10 years. So when we talk about where do we want to be in 10 years from now, we're actually discussing that at the moment because it's quite good timing, because 10-year birthday. But we're discussing it. So where do we want to be in the next 5 years? You know what? We don't have to be that specific. All we need to say is that we want to be bigger, we want to be more diverse, but consulting at our core. That's it. And I think that keeps it very simple, and it allows us to experiment with things, try things out. Now we want to have diverse businesses that are valuable. Yes, there's always the dilemma of how do you assetize that, and is there a way of raising capital, and all those questions, but they're not the forefront of our plan.
Sure.
So really our focus now is growing profitably, growing and diversifying safely, because we're bigger now. When you're 5-6 people, you can take a lot of gamble and risks and things. When you've got 60-70 people and their families and their lifestyles and all those commitments, it does change your posture. So I guess those things have changed a little bit, calmed down a bit, and we've got a bit more diligent, and we definitely are more planned for the year or two ahead. But the basic vision is very simple. Okay. So I think that's why we are like we are, and why we haven't sold, because we've still got a long way to go. And I'm 44. I've got a long way to go still, and I don't know what I would do.
You clearly still enjoy it, even it seems like you're enjoying the leadership side of it as well.
my role has changed. I think 10 times, and it's changed during COVID. It's changing now. So I love the fact that I have to keep reinventing my role. I've never been a CEO of a multi-country consultancy before. I wasn't a business owner before. So the range of roles I've been through is changing, as it has for our directors, as it has for our principals, as it has for our MCs. So I think that's what keeps it very enjoyable and fun. And I think that's why, I don't, it's a sidetrack, but if you look at people that stay in consulting throughout their career, they kind of, I think there's certain behavioral traits. One is they get bored easily. They get unsettled. They strive for. They're the guys and girls that hand the university work in like 10 minutes before deadline. That's that kind of profile, I think. And if you're in that profile where you like to live like that and constantly changing, get bored and want to move on, consulting is perfect, especially boutique niche.
Especially if you're growing.
And you're growing, because you can be boutique and not grow, right? And then it's a different world. So I do very much enjoy it. It is very stressful at times, clearly. But you learn to adapt with that. But yeah, very much enjoy it.
Good. And I guess one of the consequences, and I guess one of the stresses, less so now, but certainly when you're growing, if you don't have that sort of private equity investment or route to sale, is cash flow. Were there any points where you were thinking, it's a bit close?
I've said this. I get this question as well a couple of times. The first few years are the easiest.
Okay.
Because you can generate cash very quickly. And the decisions you're making are very simple. Cash flow rears its head pretty quick. And usually the minute you get to it will vary by company, but consulting companies. But for us, it was probably 5-6 people. Because suddenly you've got plan. Those elements come in. Things like resource planning, capacity, receivables, payroll. All these factors come in. I always remember a great quote from Bill Gates. If you read Bill Gates' books, when he first started Microsoft, he said they had this policy, which was they always would have 1 year of payroll in the bank. Always. In the early days of Microsoft. And I copied that.
Wow, really?
But what Bill says later is that quickly goes out the window. Because it's impossible. It's a very bad use of cash as well.
Yes.
It's a very poor use of cash and profit. So actually, a well-performing company should never hold that much. And if you look at people, there are extreme examples like Apple, but Apple's under a lot of capital pressure. So for us, cash flow reared its head pretty quick, 3-4 years. And we have no investors apart from ourselves. So you learn really fast how to do cash flow planning. How to work within that, sell the right deals. As you get bigger and bigger and bigger, that's how we've had our moments. We've had clients that have collapsed, not because of us, but for their own. We've had COVID, which is a minor thing that's hit a lot of consulting companies. So we've been through some pretty enormous cash flow waves, and we've learned an awful lot from them. And I think it's made us a bit of serendipity and a little bit of luck. It's made us stronger for it. So the main pressure for companies like ours is that when you're privately funded, as in not like a big backer, like a private equity firm, but founder funded, is you can outgrow your shareholders for a source of capital. And that's one of the big challenges we've always been playing with, which is if we want to aggressively grow, you need working capital to do that. And if your only source of capital is your net profit, you're limited by that percentage. So there's only a certain amount you can grow by. So it's we've been playing that game. But one of our non-execs is one of the founders from DMW. And he gave us a great advice. We were sitting there rowing about cash flow horizons and those sort of things. And he said basically in the DMW world, in consulting generally, if you have more than a 3 to 6 month horizon, you're doing very, very well. And we went, well, he goes, so is it like this all the time? I said, yes, Jeff. It's like this all the time. So you quickly learn to get used to it.
It's and I guess by nature consultants perhaps are people that are probably more comfortable with that level of insecurity. I
Definitely.
always say they're insecure overachievers.
Definitely. And I heard another good quote the other day, which was people that start entrepreneurs, and I'm not a big fan of that word, but founders, they are naturally risk hungry because they did that in the first place, right? So you need to build. So I've learned that around me, I need to have people around me and our exec team that can counterbalance that, because you're naturally very risk happy, and whereas you need people to kind of bring you to the center, and you mix that with consulting. It's pretty roller coaster. So it's good fun, but it's very risky.
It is, and it's interesting, that risk dynamic, because I do come across people that, you know, they have a firm of 10 people, but it's a cybersecurity consultancy that was started in the 1990s, and you think, and their appetite for risk was zero. And so I come across a lot of firms like that, where if they'd had more of a risk appetite, they could have been huge. But then I also come across firms that, you know, especially with COVID, they did leverage themselves a bit too much, and they found that when COVID hit, obviously, the firm closed because the cash flow collapsed on them.
So I think it's a few things there you can pick on. So COVID, we were lucky. When you're a thin, privately owned, thin profile business, yes, the wave could be too big. That hits you. Now, whatever that wave is, it could be a bad client, it could be a recession, it could be some team loss, it could be anything, right? We were lucky with COVID that none of our clients were in the direct hit sector-wise. They weren't in tourism, transport, that kind of space. If they were, we would have been in big trouble. So we lost one client, and we definitely had a revenue hit because we had deferred projects, deferred decisions. So that happened to everyone, though. And that we saw that coming, and we knew that we could, as long as we make some changes, which we did, and we were very transparent with the team, and we said, look, we think this is going to happen. We think at this point we're going to have revenue deferral. We think that will last a quarter or two, and then we'll have a huge response. And it more or less played out like that. Now, but if that client space if we'd been solely in transport, or hotels, or airlines, we would not come out the other end. No. So you need a bit of luck. I also think we also had that same decision point. About 3-4 years in, we were very busy in supply chain. We basically were in pharmaceutical and supply chain. That was our revenue clients, and most of that was supply chain, like 80%. And we sat down and we said, well, why don't we could just become a supply chain consultancy company? That would be so much easier. Because it's easier to explain yourself. It's easier to hire for. It's easier to go to market. It's easier to brand. It's everything. It's easier to plan, and it's easier to sell. Now, because we weren't trying to sell, that wasn't a factor. But it came back to our original decision to start the company, which was, no. We remember what we walked away from, and what we're trying to build here. We're only 3 years in. We're only late 30s. That's the wrong decision for us. So and looking back on it, it's the best thing we ever did, because we're very diverse. We're strong. We've got good geography covering. We get inquiries from all over the place now, and if we could have just become a Singapore-based supply chain consultancy. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But we would probably be 20 people. Like you say, 20 people, reach a certain market size, and then we're done.
Sure. So I'm interested in once a firm is looking for, even just looking for private equity investment, or they're looking to sell. The advice comes in around, recurring revenue, subscription models, assets, software, and all of that type of stuff. I'm guessing, you probably don't have the external pressure to do that type of work, but is that something that you have developed, sort of the more sort of either subscription services or software products or online courses, that type of stuff?
So yes and no. So we've diversified both in geography, first of all. So geography gives you different strength, and it has definitely helped us. We would not have our UK business without the Singapore business, And there's been times where the UK business has helped our Singapore business and vice versa. So that gives you strength. It takes time though. We've diversified our capabilities. So we started off by doing pure kind of systems integration, project management, very eccentric, as you can imagine. And we've grown out to M&A, business consulting. We do startup management. We do equity deals, revenue share deals, all these so type of work is the second area. And the third is types of services. Yes, so we started about 2 years ago. We looked at all of our revenue as consulting, and we wanted to have some of it as being service management or service based. So we've grown up to, at peak, it was about 20-30% of our revenue before COVID was non-consulting. So kind of like long-term outsource or service management or interim management type work. It's probably reduced because of COVID. It's probably more 10-15% now, but it's very much, we still sell it and do it, and it's a metric we want to grow. Likewise, we look very carefully when we have dominant clients. Not that we don't want them, that's absolutely not, but we want to keep growing them. But one of the metrics we look at is percentage of revenue, and that's another one to monitor as well. So we've done geography, types of capabilities, and then services, and then monitoring client balance as well. And the last area is we've gone into software. We've explored some quite entrepreneurial things around software and services like low code and no code. And we've spun things up that as separate brands, separate from Lancia. And that's where our vision around having consulting as a core business, but diversification around it, but they all work together. So we're trying those kind of outbound routes as well. So I think a few years we'll have a few more of them as well. So we do look for that, and we look at private equity, we look at capital raising. What they're really looking for is a return rate. So they want to deploy cash, they want to deploy capital, and they want to get 10% more back. That's it really. And if you can show them you can do that, or you're building an asset that's growing, or it can support their businesses, then they will likely join your journey.
Yes, I'm interested because you are with a lot of firms. They start off with, well, in fact, and you did sort of systems integration, started with a niche and build out from that. But you've made a lot of decisions in 10 years. Firstly, in terms of the service. Secondly, in terms of the geography. Thirdly, in terms markets, people. How formal does, say you're opening a new office or something along these lines, do you have time to do the sort of the formal market assessment, comparing it to other investment opportunities and all the rest of it? Because even at the size you're at now, you can't afford, I'm assuming you can't afford 5 people to run off and do a big market analysis of where to open the next office.
No, we didn't do that. So we started. We were very opportunistic by nature, and so our UK office started by someone we knew and a client we knew, and we thought, let's go. And from that seed, we're now 20+ people in the UK. We've grown to Belfast and Edinburgh, but we set out the same vision in the UK, which was we want to be a UK nationwide business. So since the vision just flows down, so we didn't do those things. No, we started those businesses. Well, first of all, we wanted to do it very quickly anyway, because when we first started the company. But we just went about it in a very opportunistic way, and we made sure there was enough there to grow it, and we could feed ourselves and grow the business. That's now a multi-million consulting business. However, it does get harder. So we look at Hong Kong. We took the same approach, which was, this is before the troubles in Hong Kong and COVID. So we're a little bit. That's when sometimes the luck goes against you. So Hong Kong, we took the same approach. Let's go. We know a client. We know someone that's prepared to move there. We know some hiring. Let's go. We got pretty close. We were very close to a couple of client wins. Didn't quite come off. It happens. Then the troubles in Hong Kong. We paused, and then COVID. We paused again. So it doesn't always work when you take that approach and you haven't got the bank of private equity behind you. You have to adapt. So Hong Kong's been adapting. Germany, we took a different approach. and so on. But then with the software company, we tried that differently as well. So I think we're very adaptable. We look, what we've learned to do is make decisions very, very quickly. We
Okay.
feel we take too long. And a decision for us would be like a couple of months.
Right.
And
Okay. Yeah.
we feel that's too much. Whereas others would say, you didn't give it a couple of years? Like, no, 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 no.
Sure. Yes. Yes.
We haven't got time for that
No,
these days. So
no.
so our decision making is definitely narrowing. And I think that's where capital gives you that
Yeah.
breathing space.
Yes.
But I think that's why I think we work with PE firms, and I think that's why they like our attitude, because we've grown up with a very narrow, sharp focus,
Yeah.
and we've learned from our decisions. Yeah.
And it can't. I mean, to some extent, I'm not saying it was easy, but I'm saying to some extent, the Singapore when you opened in Singapore, you were ahead of the curve. You could see what was happening elsewhere in more mature markets, and you could almost see what was coming
Yep.
down the line. Opening an office in the UK, I think, is probably the most competitive consulting market in the world.
Yep.
We spend more per head per capita on consultants than anyone, including the Americans.
Yep.
But a result of that is that it seems that everyone and their dog has a consulting company. So to grow to 20 in that time period is actually, is as big, in my eyes, is as big an achievement as what you've done in Singapore. How have you elbowed some room at the bar in a fairly mature market?
Well, one answer is we've kept out of London.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
So if you look at the consulting market of the UK,
Yeah, sure.
most of it's in London.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think if you look at and we know, I mean, you know them, we know them. I'd say the boutiques that have been around for 20, 25 years,
Yeah.
who have not sold yet or moved on or whatever.
Yeah.
Most of it's London based.
Yeah.
There are a few exceptions, like the Baringas.
Yeah, sure.
There are a few that have done bigger and more wonderful things, but they've had some serious backing to do that.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
what we did is, number one is we were very quiet. We worked with one or two clients. We carried on our same attitude from Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
We hired for people we knew. We actually embraced Bristol as an opportunity quite quickly,
Okay.
as a hub.
Yep.
And we thought, let's go there. Let's just do that. We can serve anyone from there anyway.
Yes.
And we went out with we've had a UK mindset from day one. Now, if you look at our competitors, they say they have that, but they don't really. And we quickly went to Edinburgh because we knew someone there. We said,
Okay.
we're committed to that.
Yep.
And we've quickly gone to Belfast for opportunity we've had. We quickly raised some grant funding to help us that. And we'll keep looking for some opportunities in the UK. So we've elbowed our space by keeping out of one of the rings.
Yeah.
And we've focused on, and we've been a bit lucky. We've focused on a couple of clients that know as well, and we've looked at markets that are not as competitive, perhaps. So, west of England, operating with third sector, operating with different types of firms that those other firms aren't really servicing.
Yep.
Has helped us, yeah. So a bit of luck, a bit of this, a bit of competition positioning, and a UK posture.
Okay.
So when we go to we're looking at Belfast clients now, Northern Ireland clients rather.
Yep.
We're quite compelling.
I can imagine. Yes.
So, and then you mix that in with the Singapore piece, and you say how many, not just Singapore, but how many Asian consultancies have moved into Europe.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're completely right.
So we mix those two things together. We've got our own space, yes, and we're still learning how to explain that, and we're learning how to embrace being local as well as being a global brand, which we don't really have the answer for yet. We're working that out.
Yep.
As we grow, because for example in Singapore we have a different market positioning to in the UK, and like you said, a very different market as well. The UK consulting market is phenomenal. So we have to learn those things. But yeah, I'm very proud of where the UK business has got to. Very, very proud. Equally, I'm very proud of the Singapore business. It's they're different animals.
Yes, yeah, I can imagine. Does that pose any problems in terms of a consistent brand or consistent ways of working? Because Singapore's obviously very different, business environment and way of working, etc.
It does, but again, like I said at the beginning, I look at those things as positive kind of examples to go through. So there are differences, absolutely. And when I moved with Accenture, I moved from London to Singapore. Yes, the logo's the same, the office looks the same, the timesheet system's the same. That's it.
Yeah.
The clients are different, the culture's different, the buying style's different, the way of work is different, people's family life is different, people's net income is different, everything is different, the weather's different, everything's different. So yes, we've been through those moments, and we continue. We're still going. So a good example is social impact. They're very different interpretations in the two markets. So one of the things we're learning is that actually the brand and our values and what the company history we're built upon is common.
Okay.
And we've actually we're going through our 10-year thing at the moment, and we've been doing some work on that with the team, and actually we're seeing some very common threads across the team. So actually a lot of those things at brand level and people, kind of career and values is there are differences, but they're fairly common. Go to market, very different.
Okay.
And what we learned in the last few years, we're trying to do everything the same. Which worked for a short while, but actually you can't do that. So what we're learning now is how do we have the combination. And I always tell the story that, again, not to bash Accenture, because I think they are a phenomenal success story.
Yeah, sure.
But when I worked in London at Accenture 15 years ago, I didn't care about the person sat next to me.
Yes, sure.
As in, I didn't care. I didn't dislike them.
Yeah,
but I didn't care what project they're on, what client they're on, what sector, which OG they're in, anything. Let alone the next building, let alone the next city, next office, next country. So we're a long way from that. So in Lancia, everyone is still one team. We don't have any of those divisions. And I think that's one nice thing that's attractive about our kind of company is that we have none of those barriers. Yes, we do have a bit of UK, Singapore, Germany, and that's natural as we grow. And they're naturally very proud and protective of what they're building.
Yep.
So you've got to embrace that.
Yeah.
So those divisions, not divisions, but those lines will emerge, and we're just learning how to embrace them. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I've got one final question, and that is to ask about not just about the future, but what what challenges and opportunities you can see coming down the line for your space. I mean, digital's obviously been. Digital's one of those awful words, but there's a lot of transformation. The boundaries of consultancy are blurring significantly. Markets are changing significantly. COVID's shaken everything up. Everyone seems to be selling AI or machine learning or something. In your space, what are the opportunities and challenges that you can see coming down the line?
Okay, so it is so it's slightly different depending on the geographies. There is some differences. So I think I'll split them a little bit. But we do. I think for Asia, I think we've got a huge opportunity with the vacuum ahead. Still, that's there. Okay. We are arguably unique. I say that carefully. Sure. But we are, and we've got opportunity to really establish a very powerful presence in the region. Yeah, and let alone Singapore. So opportunity to certain types of work in that region that we can play into. So certain size of work, like you say, there are technologies and there are initiatives that are in Asia are really attractive. So you've got a lot of legacy, you've got a lot of family-owned businesses, you've got a lot of fragmentation, you've got a lot of acquisition, you've got a lot of those. There's a lot of cash moving into the region. So for us as a consultancy, which is multidisciplined, we are very well positioned to help with those sort of initiatives. Yeah. And so sometimes you take things like digitalization, and you take that into Asia, into a family-owned business that's 70 years old, that's maybe a couple hundred million revenue, but running on spreadsheets. Yep. That opportunity is very different to going into a company in, say, London, that's quite mature digitally and is experimenting. So for Asia, we've got a very large playing field, I think, and there are technologies that are very a bit like the mobile phone analogy. That you can jump technology very quickly in that region. Yep. Whereas I think in Europe, we've got an opportunity to take on a client demand where they don't want to work with the big established consultancies,
Sure. Okay.
and they're looking for an alternative, and they're looking for. Well, I've always worked with those guys, and I've been using them, and there's not, and the boutique space is very London centric, and what who else is there? And I think we've got that opportunity for our European business. I think much more around the senior program management, business consulting, but as an alternative. I think the digitalization agenda in Europe is very different from that in Asia.
Okay.
It's there, but there's a lot of people that you say using words and spinning them around, but not really doing it.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it, very simply. There are certain initiatives, there are certain things that we're putting bets on, things like low code and no code, M&A, particularly in Asia Pacific. We're geographically looking at expansion, Germany, UK. We very much want to grow our social impact agenda in the UK, like that you mentioned, you ticked on. So there's things like that. But otherwise, keep adding clients, keep growing different types of work, and attracting some really good people.
Brilliant. Okay. That's fantastic. I'm sure you're going to continue to do brilliantly. It's a lovely story. And I hope you don't mind me sharing with the readers that you very kindly agreed to sponsor firstly one of my students' replacement, but secondly one of my student a prize for our class, which is very, very sweet of you.
No, we're always very keen to do those things. It's a great way of getting to know universities, and a great way also elbowing our way in the brand space with the other consultancies.
Yeah, so sure.
It works very well.
I mean, it does seem to me that a lot, I've been teaching MBA students for 15 years now, and it does seem to me that as the larger consultancies have grown, become more commodified, utilization rates have gone up, as the number of partners has shot up. Levels of training are down. It's less attractive to them than it was. Obviously the brand is still there to some extent, though less so with McKinsey after all their PR disasters. But it does seem to me that more students are looking at the boutique space, and that's something that I very much encourage, because, as you said at the beginning, I think they learn a lot more.
Yes, and I'm very honest with new hires. When I joined Accenture in 2004. It was a very different company to what it was in 2008, 2012, 2016, 2021. And there's nothing wrong with those companies.
Yes.
They're just very, very different. So I think if you look at what was attractive, I've seen before people say, "Oh, is consulting so attractive to graduates today or new hires as what it was 15, 20 years ago?" I say yes. I just say those firms are not as attractive.
Yes, definitely.
And I think the consulting of that I grew up on as a young, newish graduate is out there.
Yeah.
But you've got to look for it in different places. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah. Not to say that going to a big one is not going to be a great way of developing and learning things. Yeah. It's just a different train ride.
Yeah. Brilliant. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and best of luck for the future.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for talking. It was great to catch up.